Session on FileWave MDM. My name is Frank Decker. I'm a tech director for Centennial School District, which is just east of Portland. This is Chris Dressel. He's our network administrator, and Robin Pear is our systems administrator. Most of what you're going to see today, they're going to go over with you. I just want to give just a little introduction about FileWave and Centennial. We've been customers now for almost 5 years. We started with FileWave back when we were just going to see an influx of new MacBook computers for our licensed staff. We're going to see an influx of iPads and a lot of other mobile devices, and we also have PCs throughout the district, and we needed something that we could use to easily manage these devices and our inventory, being that we were understaffed at the time and still really understaffed for the size of our district. We have 6,300 students, 10 schools, and about 800 staff members. So FileWave has done its job in terms of what we were looking for, something that's easy to use, something that saves us a bunch of time in the IT department. And they've been really exceptionally responsive to on a support level, and also just in terms of us giving recommendations for things that could be better and having them respond back in the new versions and making some of those changes. We also have Ben Miles with FileWave here with us today, and Todd and Avery from FileWave. So after the session is done, we've got a lot to cover, and we've timed it down to about exactly an hour. But we'll have time, there's a break afterwards. If you'd like to meet with Chris, Rob, and myself, or during one of the end sessions, we'd be happy to answer any more of your questions for you. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris and Robin.
All right, so we use FileWave quite a bit on a daily basis, and we're going to fly through this fairly quick because there's a lot of features to cover. It's kind of our dashboard. Kind of gives us an overview of what our status is in FileWave. This is the first thing we see. It's always just good to see everything's green, everything's working. It's a good day. We also again can get our server performance here. We're actually on a demo server for this presentation. This will give us our usage, everything. We also get a distribution of clients. This is a little skewed right now because we actually sync this with our Google domain, and so it pulled in all of our Chromebooks, but we only have one iOS and one macOS in this demo server, so our pie graph's a little off right now. FileWave has quite a bit of functionality in it. We'll kind of go through a quick overview, and then we'll touch in depth on everything a little bit later in the session. Here's where all our clients are. It supports Chromebooks, iPads, macOS, PCs. It also supports Android. We don't have any of those in our system right now. We had actually planned on doing Androids for phones, but the company developing the phones kind of didn't really go that far down the Android route, and it became unreliable. Everything within FileWave is done through what's called a fileset, and this is the package or script or app that you want to push out to the device, and that is managed through associations here. The nice thing about FileWave is you can go through, configure all your changes, and then nothing actually happens until you hit this update model button, so you can stage everything before actually going live with it. And we've used that quite a bit because there's multiple settings you can do per deployment, and we'll cover those here a little bit later. Other features it has, it gathers an iOS inventory, so we can see information about all the iPads we have in our system. It also does license tracking, so let's say you have 10 instances of Adobe Acrobat Pro, you could then actually link that to a file set, and it will count how many deployments you've used that. Once it hits 0, it'll stop deploying. So even if the app itself doesn't support license management, this will do that for you, and you can add more licenses in through POs within here. FileWave then also uses boosters, and what those are, let's say you have multiple sites, you set a booster up at each site, FileWave can then push everything to that booster, and that booster will then distribute it to the clients locally there, just saving on bandwidth, making the whole process a little more efficient. In our day-to-day stuff, we spend a lot of time in clients. We'll add and remove clients, and a lot of times in file sets and associations, linking those to each client. And it's just saved us numerous hours. One instance, we had re-imaged a computer lab, and when they gave us a list of software, they didn't tell us they needed Adobe CS6 on there, which is, if you guys have known, that's about a 10 gig package to push out. So they call us like, hey, where's CS6? We need this for a class in 15 minutes. So we went into FileWave, and we already had the file set in there because we'd use it in our lab. Associated with that lab, by the time class started, every computer in that lab had CS6 ready to go. Beyond that, I think it also syncs with Apple's DEP and BPP programs. That's helpful. So with the, I don't know if you guys are all familiar with DEP, but so on this, we can actually create a profile when the iPad is first turned on through DEP. It enrolls right in FileWave. Nice thing about that is if the iPad is stolen, they go to wipe it, it has an activation lock on the device from FileWave through Apple, so they can't do anything with it. It's bricked as far as they're concerned. VPP is really nice. It syncs in continuously. So if I go back to my dashboard here, we actually don't have VPP configured for this because we didn't have time to get a second VPP account. But it will sync continuously. Same with DEP syncs, so that it always has your updated VPP and your DEP. I'm going to hand this over to Chris real quick, and he's going to kind of cover file sets here.
All right, so we get clients enrolled in the system. The best way to enroll the client here is under the Client Section tab, we hit New Client. And you can see clients. You can enroll mobile devices. You can use desktop clients that have checked in. You can create placeholders by uploading text files or entering the name. You've also got that DEP entrance and text file for your clients. So if we need to hit a client, we hit here. We look, you'll see the clients in the list. You grab those, you hit the Add Client button, and they show up in your client list. So as you can see down here, we've got iPads, we've got Macs. We don't have any PCs to show you, but we do have a lot of PCs in ours. As he said, we sync it with our Google, so it went into Google and it grabbed our OU structure from Google. We've got some base levels in here that people have been enrolling over the last couple days. Some of the things you can see under devices, we've got our OU structure down to cart level. The good news is on the side, it has a comment. That's the technician that did the Google enrollment for you, so you can see who did that. Under the Mac section, you can see iPads and Macs we have here. iPads, obviously, it's a mobile device. It has a little iPad logo. Under the Macs, you have an Apple device, and under the PCs, you'll see a little Windows logo. So we get our devices in. You can use those devices in many different ways. You can create smart groups. So you can take a group and clone a device into multiple groups, so you can assign FileWave packages based on dynamic groups. You can link it to AD, and it'll pull groups from Active Directory as well. Typically, we just create our own groups by cart right now. We are not fully one-to-one. But in the event you are one-to-one, you can use dynamic groups in Active Directory as well. So we've got clients in the system. We've enrolled them in. We look at file sets here. We can take file sets very similar to how we get clients in. We hit New File Set. Many different ways to create file sets in FileWave. We can grab an app right from an app package. So you've got a DMG. When you open it up, there's no PKG in it. It's just an app folder, right? You can drop that app or that folder directly in there. You can create an empty file set. You can import file sets from other FileWave servers if you're running multiple servers. You can actually run software update here. And I can say, I'm looking at Windows, and I need to grab an update for Windows XP security. It'll go out, it'll look at Windows updates, it'll find whatever security you want. And apparently, as always, the ACP
XP's
Wi-Fi.
already secure. There's no updates.
Exactly. Nobody needs XP security updates. That's why they don't show up. The good news is it also looks to the clients to see what clients have requested file sets. If you check this box here, it's only going to look for file sets that your clients have requested. Let's see. Go back there. So in our file sets, we also have profiles. So we can push out Apple configurator profiles. We can push out iOS profiles, Mac profiles, whatever profile you want. And guess what? Now you don't need Apple configurator. Configurator options are now built right into the profile editor. So you can go through and say, I want to add a web clip. I just saw it. Add a web clip to an iOS device because we want them to be able to click an app just to go to a web page. We don't want them to have to know how to get there because kindergartners can't really type in URLs. So you label your web clip, you type in the URL. I can say, no, it's not removable. I don't want that little kindergartner holding down because mommy's got an iPhone, they know how to delete apps. You can use the pre-composed iOS icons. You can go into full screen mode only. All those other options there as well. discard. So from the App Store, we can look at apps, and we can say, I want apps for Starfall. Hey, look at that. We've got Starfall apps. I grab that right from iTunes. Click a button down on the bottom. Oop. Oh, nope. Sorry. The W is too close to the Q button there. So file sets, as you can see, we just grabbed and file sets imported. Now, as Robin said, you can stage apps because there's many different options you can do in file sets. Until you've updated that model, you'll see a modified option there. That tells you that app is not live or you've made changes to that app without updating the model. So I can go in here and I can say, I want to see the properties of this app. I can see the App Store link, what the developer, what version, release date, all that good stuff. Once you link your VPP to it, you can pick different VPP tokens for districts that are using multiple VPP owners, building level, district level, however you have it. All kinds of different tokens you can do there. You can say reserve maximums, minimums, all those good things. We can create file set groups, kind of like smart groups with clients. You can say here's a group of file sets that have to be implemented. Mobile file sets, very similar the same way. As you can see, it just limits us to those iOS apps or just Android apps. We can pull those documents and apps the exact same way there. And if I want to, I can say MSI or PKG. We're going to take MakerBot. We're going to drop MakerBot in there, and as you can see down on the bottom, we are uploading file 1 of 1. If I double click on that, the file's not finished yet. It's not going to let me edit that file set until that progress bar completes. Now, I can look in there. When I double click the file set, it's going to give you the entire folder structure, Windows and PC and Mac at the same time. If you don't want to see file set folder structures that don't match the file set type that you're pushing, hide unused folders, and as we can see, we can trace that right down to where FileWave is putting that package before it does its install. So I can say, hit W that time, good job. Come down here and I hit properties on this. Because it's not an iOS, the properties look a little bit differently. If this were a 6 gig Mac OS update, which we pushed
El Capitan.
El Capitan via FileWave. We can say this package requires a reboot and we want to give that user a message. The user can delay the reboot a few times and you can change those requirements so it pops up in the middle of a lesson, teacher just hits ignore and waits till they go home to do that update later that day. We can say ignore permissions on the existing folders. We can set the priority. Verification settings, so self-healing. We can say we always want that package there. If the teacher deletes that app, next verification cycle, put that app back. Or a file, board members. Oh, the board member accidentally deleted this week's notes. We want that to stay there. Download if missing. If they deleted it, at least download it to give them that option. Ignore it, verify. Left behind means that if they've gotten rid of that app, that was their choice. We really don't care. Next tab, requirements. We can select specific platforms, specific architectures, require specific memory. So this is MakerBot. I want them to have at least, what is it, 8192? 8 gigs of RAM. I want them not to be able to use 32-bit PowerPCs, 64-bit Intel only, and I only want to limit it down to 1012. Obviously, I've checked Mac OS, so the Windows versions don't matter. And I can evaluate the requirements and change. And this is a key I really like. Use install on newer OS versions. That way when 10.13 comes out, you don't have to update all your packages. This is a feature we requested 2 years ago, dependencies. We noticed as we were pushing features...
It didn't take us 2 years to write it.
No. Correct. It was almost, what, a month, 2 months before the next version had this written in it. So we ran into an issue with Microsoft Office. We had to push updates out in certain orders. Otherwise, one update wouldn't install. So you can come in here and you can say, this package requires, where are we at here? This package requires Google Chrome because in order to use MakerBot, we want you to get the Thingiverse to download those STL files. So I can say that depends on that, and I hit OK. Next tab in the delete files, we can say, this is a newer version of this file, delete the old version, or get rid of XYZ for whatever reason before you do this, because it's a conflict. Kiosk. This is one of the features that really sold me on FileWave when we first started looking at it. So the kiosk feature is a self-service install where the user does not require to have administrative privileges. I'm a network administrator. Security is my forte. I hate giving out admin privileges to users. This here, you can go in, you associate your file set, you say it's a kiosk file set, you can pick your icon, you can give it a title, you can give it a body, you pick what category it goes in, and you hit the button to say OK. So we'll move this up here to Mac. Maybe. And what else we got?
You need to associate that and show it
Yep.
again.
So as you can see, we have modifications on the side here. Nothing has been changed. I'm making all these modifications without having the clients download any new manifests, anything differently. So we've got our files in. We're looking good. I can go to associations, and I can see here's my clients, here's my file sets, and when I select a specific client, I can see what file sets are associated. So I can come down here and I can say, show associated file sets. This client currently has no file sets associated. So if I want that guy to have Google Chrome, where are we at here?
Drag and drop.
Oh, yep, drag and drop. So I grab Google Chrome, drag it on top of there. As you can see, the association popped up down here. The great thing about once you create an association, where's that here? Double click. All right, the great thing about this association is you can time it. And this was another great feature from the get-go. Mobile Iron didn't have. All these other MDMs didn't have these features when we bought into FileWave. I can say, start downloading this file at a specific time. Activate this file at this specific time. Yep. So while we're downloading this file over the course of a week, we don't want them to start installing it until Friday. And then I can say these files are inactive at a certain time and then to delete them. So you can automatically remove software at the end of the year. So if you're using FileWave in a BYOD environment, the kid moves off to its next school. He's not taking all the software that's not relevant from middle school into high school anymore. And then we talked about the kiosk, the self-serve option down there. This is where you pick whether or not this is a kiosk association. When you pick that kiosk association, it immediately becomes available for install to the end user. You can also go in and assign license to user or device. Apple hates us for this. We assign licensing to the device because we don't want that student to leave next year and we have to buy that license all over again. So we can go in. What was the next one? Scripts, right?
Yeah, script.
So back into file sets, another great feature that we really liked. Where was scripts at?
Click on one. And then top menu.
Oh, there we go.
It's a new feature.
They've overhauled the interface since I got really, really deep into it.
And this is another feature that we requested, and then probably within like 2 or 3 months, we saw it in the next major release.
We were using a software called Packages for Mac OS, and that allowed you to put scripts in before post-flight and pre-flight scripts for software. So especially with Google Chrome, you can't just say deploy Google Chrome, because if Google Chrome's open, it's not going to work. So we had to put a script in that said kill Google Chrome. So we were using packages to create that script, and I think it was last year. Last year we mentioned to them saying, hey, it would be great if we had this feature too. A couple months down the road, hey, feature's built in. So we hit scripts here. We can say here's a requirement script. Here's your pre-flight scripts, activation script when the software starts to run. Post-flight scripts, verification, post-uninstallation or pre-uninstallation and post-uninstallation scripts. And you can create fresh scripts or you can import scripts that you've already written. So if you've got tons of shell scripts, they're right there ready to roll. Anything on that scripts you want to cover?
Google Chrome has some. You can do script editor.
Under create. Oh, yep. So under Google Chrome, Robin has a script in there for you already. And we can hit edit and we can show you. We actually had to go in, sudo kill all, Google Chrome, write out the defaults.
That
and then
disables
exit.
Google Chrome updates.
Yep. And we can see line edgings. If you want to use those on Mac OS, you'll use Unix or Linux as well, because this can manage Linux devices if you want. And Windows devices, it'll change the line endings. That way your systems don't get confused between the two.
That should be about
Do we have big
file.
scripters in the room? Big script person? Can you do one thing real quick? Can you click
Yep.
on scripts again to open it up for that one? And then click on one of the stages like requirements.
Requirements.
I like any of them. doesn't
Yep.
matter. And then click create and name it as something.bat, right? .bat and delete sh, right? And hit OK. So it even knows that you're making a bat file and will give you a sample of here's what you would need to do if you're making a bat file versus an sh versus a PowerShell versus that was all.
So you have templates built into it, basically.
Yeah, because basically, so if you hit cancel here, all of those stages are dependent on the last one succeeding. So if you send her a script during the requirements phase that fails, well, we don't want to start downloading anything to machine because it failed. So if the first script exits anything other than 0, we're not going to keep going.
Yep.
We have a very comprehensive flow chart on this.
Oh, yes.
All right, so
I didn't have your notes down, so.
no worries. So moving over associations, like I said, once you're done, down here in the lower right-hand corner, I don't know if you guys can see it now. The overscan's not there. In the lower right-hand corner, it actually gives an incremental count of your model number. So I think on our production system, we're at almost 1,600 model number. So we push deploy, hit update, push deploy, hit update. We've done that quite often. Down here right now in our test
If you
system,
click on it, it'll bring up the server info.
there we go.
Which has the model number.
Yep. So server info, obviously we're running in Linux. Not updated to the latest version, but model number 14, we're using the evaluation license, which any of you guys can go back to your district, download this, start evaluating it and playing with it. I highly recommend it.
Okay, Mom.
Hit update model here. Things have changed.
You probably had a date change.
Had a date change in one of our files there. So we hit yes. Are you sure you want to update model? Yep. Backing up the previous model. So if you need to roll back because something went wrong,
No.
huh?
No.
You can't roll back?
No, you can't. I'm just being sarcastic.
I was like, wait.
Nothing ever goes wrong.
It's like, we haven't had to roll back. But
Yes. I always see that, so I always thought you could. All right, so that's pretty comprehensive for file sets. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Now we're going to be looking at client monitor.
we're done here.
Inventory.
Can I ask one question? How many rollbacks? One?
So getting technical, there's a difference between revert model and restore model. And so we keep about 15 to 20 previous models that you can roll back to. The problem is that anything that has permanent consequences isn't part of that model restore. So what's backed up there is like what was associated to where and how was it scheduled. But if he went into file sets here, selected all of his Mac file sets, deleted them all, and updated the model, those files have physically been deleted. Those weren't part of that backup. Yeah. So those aren't part of a model restore. Those would be part of your backup
Thanks.
that you run in the server.
All right, so back to clients here. FileWave does great managing software, pushing profiles, doing all those fancy things that you don't have to touch every system for. But it can also do a lot more. So in our test system here, we're going to look at this machine, and when I click on this, it's going to bring up our client info screen. In our client info screen, it's going to tell us what file sets are associated, what scripts are associated, and give us some options here. We can take the current tab and export it all out to a CSV. We have our client monitor we can bring up. I'll show you that here in a second. Under file set status, we go over to device details. I can pull almost anything I want from that machine as it's checked in and dumped its info. I can look at command history to see, hey, why isn't it getting this profile list? It says it's acknowledged, it's running under user ITC. What's going on? And I can see a comprehensive history of everything that's been pushed, pulled, deleted, all that good stuff there. I can see what current profiles are installed. As you can see, we have our wireless profile at our district installed on this. We have mobile device management. The way we have it currently set up is we actually have Apple's DEP push our base management profile. So the first thing any of our devices want to do when they get a network connection is to check in with our server. It's really good if your devices get stolen. I don't know how many of you heard. We had some break-ins this year where some of our laptops got stolen and trashed out in the yard and taken, and well, when we hit the white button, they're no good to the end user. We can also, we can also see users, and this is interesting in that we're looking at normal users. I can see this username ITC is logged in, and I want to show you something really cool in a second with that. We'll also go to position map. Hey look, that's right where we are. I can GPS track all my devices right here. Something gets stolen now, I flip the switch, boom. We don't do that preemptively on everybody's device, but like I said, we've had some that got stolen and we decided to do that. Across the top here, once again I said client monitor, remote wipe, we can get the logs. Pull the logs right into Mac System Info and look at remote logs right from here. If I hit verify, it's going to tell that client to check in, make sure you're fully updated with all your software and profiles. If you're not, grab them and re-verify. I accidentally hit observe client. This is cross-platform.
No password without the last character.
Okay. So this is cross-platform. I can use a Macintosh to control a PC. I can use a PC to control Macintosh right through this interface here. This is the test Macintosh we have sitting here. I can launch software, do everything I need just as if I was using ARD, because this is using native screen sharing. In Microsoft, it uses native RDP, right?
VNC.
VNC, that's right.
You can toggle it. You can tell that if you're on a Windows machine, I want to use RDC.
Yeah.
Or you can tell the client, run the FileWave built-in observe and control capability.
The nice thing is if you use the VNC, it doesn't matter what platform or client you're on to admin it, you can connect to either platform remote.
Yep. So behind client info, we also have client monitor. This is a live look at the clients as they're checking in. I can see the name of the machine. I can see what port and IP we're talking through, what version of FileWave client they have, what their platform is, what server they're checking in, their current model number. The status is that FileWave is running, and we're going to be checking back in 86 seconds. Server connected, no updates, and the last successful connection. I can go in here from here and tell them verify. Same verify button is there. Pull the logs as well. Change preferences. So if I want to change password preferences or whatnot for that specific machine, I have that option. Maybe.
Got the client password configured.
Spinning wheel of death. All right. So that's it for client info. The one thing I did want to show you, one more thing. Those of you who are going heavily to Chromebooks, if you're not doing one-to-one yet, this is my favorite little feature so far.
ITC demo.
ITC demo. I can click this Chromebook, bring it up. I can say users. All these users have logged into that Chromebook, and I can see they're not currently logged in, and they are a managed user or unmanaged user.
So if some kid broke one during a certain time frame, you could literally pull it up and find out what kid was there.
We've had to do that.
And we have to.
Yep.
Do you RDP into those Chromebooks?
Not at this point.
Not. No.
That is a great feature request.
Yep.
Not sure.
They just added Chromebook support at the end of March, so that's how new it is.
This is fairly new. We've got into the beta, so we've had a little more hands on it, but so far it's been a fantastic platform for us. That's it for me. I'm going to hand back over to Rob, and he's going to start with the inventory.
All right, so FileWave also has a comprehensive inventory on here. So it has a bunch of built-in queries. We use this a lot, not too often, but there's a lot of times we use it just to kind of help us in IT. So over the last summer, we did SSD upgrades on all of our MacBooks, and part of that was we were going from a 500 gig spinning disk to a 250 SSD. We're also upgrading them from 4 gigs of RAM to 8 gigs of RAM. We were actually able to go in and make a query, and we said we want to go all devices, and we want to give us one RAM size we want is less than, and we said 8 gigabytes. And what that did for us when we ran that report is then told us all the devices that we missed. I'm going to actually say 6 because it's how Mac reports this. So we say all devices where RAM is less than 6 gigabytes. These all have more than 8 or more than 6, so that's not a reporting thing. I'll go ahead and give this to, well, that's a lot of RAM. So we'll find all the Macs that have less than 16 gigabytes. Well, we now know that our demo machine right here has less than 16. It doesn't show us that, but now we want to drag the size there. We got another field to our report. We also maybe want to say how much disk space it has. Now we know how much free disk space that computer has. The reporting here is amazing, and it checks in with the client, so that's synced from the clients, and not perfectly real time, but about our sync is every 2 minutes. So we do get reports quite a bit, and it's been really helpful. We just say, what's going on out in our district, or we need to find out who has this software because we're doing an upgrade. We actually ran a report when Firefox had that big security risk. We're like, all right, how many PCs have the version of Firefox that is affected? And we were able to determine that, and we determined our best source of action was actually block Firefox completely with our antivirus software, as opposed to just touching them. But we were able to determine that, and then we could see who had it, who we knew could have problems, because it does also pull software inventory. it would be an entire day if we went through every field in here. But inventory is very useful to us. Even though we don't use it on a regular basis, it's there. We use it as a tool to kind of get eyes on what our devices are doing.
Is this your main asset management then?
We actually have a database we do for asset management, but we could use this for that if we chose to.
Can we barcode for this?
That's a good question.
Yeah, so there's a field you could use for that. A lot of people that do that, so we have a RESTful API backend to our inventory, so they'll have that secondary system, but they'll be constantly pulling the live information from FileWave, like free space. And you can also write back, so they were showing a moment ago in the comments field for like a Chromebooks, it was showing who enrolled it, but you could also say that you wanted to write the barcode to the comments field. We allow you, there's 20 custom string, Boolean, date, time, and fields that you're allowed to use for whatever you want for each client.
Okay, so the feature's not built into the system though.
Correct.
We couldn't just create barcodes from the system. Gotcha.
Oh, we don't. No, barcodes from
I don't have a client passwords configured anyway. But yeah, I mean, inventory could do that. It does track everything by serial numbers, so it would be pretty easy to link it, like you said, using the API to your existing inventory system to backfeed all the information. Like I said, we're not going to touch too much in inventory because there's a lot you can do, but we only use it on an as-needed basis. The next big thing we're moving on to is FileWave Engage, which is classroom management through FileWave. So you saw how Chris made profiles in there earlier. We can make a profile that says AirPlay to this teacher device or restrict to this web page. The advantage to that then is, go ahead and disconnect yours. So if we're using FileWave Engage, I'll actually get everything up here. Do this one. So FileWave Engage is made available to the teachers. Just a second here. So this is the teacher side of things. I'm going to go ahead and log in as a teacher while Chris gets client devices in here. So a teacher comes in, they'll see their classes. I've done everything by hand right through CSV files, but FileWave does support sync from Clever and Apple School Manager. So if you already have your classes there and teachers there, this will pull that in. I'm going to go ahead and just do it with our demo class because we don't have teacher passwords, so we can't demonstrate that. So I'm going to go ahead and activate my class. What's nice here is I want my class to end at 3 p.m. today. So let's go ahead and activate that. When a
Quick
class,
question.
yeah.
Which one is the teacher and which one is the student?
This is the teacher.
This is the
Okay.
teacher here, sorry.
Top left. Yeah.
This is the teacher.
Thank you.
The MacBook's the teacher. Let's go ahead and launch Engage in there. So when the class activation ends, it will revert back any changes that teacher made, making the iPads ready for the next class, or Chromebooks in this case. So as you can see here, we've got a Chromebook logged in, and we now have an iPad logged in. We've got different students logged in. Chris logged in with the same account on both, I think.
No, 1 and 2.
Okay, there we go.
1 is the Chromebook, 2 is the iPad.
All right, so you can send different features. So like, let's say the kids are screwing around, not paying attention. I'm gonna send eyes up front. I'm gonna go ahead and send that out. That now then goes to, I think you did log in as 2.
No, 1.
Normally that would go through to both devices. We have to log out and back in on that one. Nothing like a live demo, right? You notice now then all the other actions are grayed out because the kids essentially can't use their devices because it is locked out. So I can go ahead and hit reset action. Maybe I didn't select all devices. Another useful thing is, let's say we want them to go to a URL. Let's send everyone to ACPE. We'll send that out.
Come on, Wi-Fi. Come on, Wi-Fi.
This requires Apple push notifications and Google Cloud push, and because the Wi-Fi is a little flaky here, some of these demos may not work, but on your production network, they work well. It's just we're dealing with ACPE Wi-Fi and the conference syndrome.
And all of it's connected.
Yeah. So well, everything so far has been local, but this now requires internet. We knew this would have issues. So again, you can send out a message to or a URL to them. If the push notifications are working, Chrome would pop up on the Chromebook, Safari would pop up on the iPad with those URLs in place. Same thing, you can also send a message out saying free pizza on Friday. you know, a little message to your kids. When I'm responding again, it's the push notification. So they got free pizza on Friday. And then the student can then acknowledge that. It's not important. Another thing, this has built-in polling. So let's say we want to make a poll for students. I've made a few in there. Let's go ahead and make let's edit this poll here. It's like, title, days. What day is it? And you have different questions saying, what is a day? It's Wednesday. Today's Monday. And you can mark what is the correct or incorrect answer. Let's add a new response and say Friday. And that is also an incorrect answer. So let's go ahead and save that. I can then go back to my students, select all students, and I will say, let's use a poll. We want to have a poll for days. We'll send that out. Chris gets the poll on his iPad there. He's going to say it's Friday. The Chromebook is off in its own world. Now as a teacher, I can go back, view my, there goes the polls. He's doing it manually. I'm going to go back in, view my polls, and I'm going to hit view results. Now I can say that, even though I must have marked that wrong, this student was wrong, this student was right. They can get an overview and see who did that. And that's some of the basic features. That's both platforms. There are other features that are iOS only that may or may not come to Chromebook, we're not sure. Profile, so if I click over here now, I've created a profile that says allow IXL. What that does is actually turns on the web content filter in iOS saying kids can go to www.ixl.com, and that's it. So if I were to turn this on now and Chris were to try to go to another URL on that device, it helps if I select all.
You say that doesn't work on the Chromebook?
Not at this point. And so Chris is going to try to go to Apple, and it should just not load.
Maybe.
Again, the internet out from here is a little special.
So you can push a URL to Chrome device, you just can't, at this point, limit it to a URL.
Yeah, and I may have set that policy up wrong. That was kind of rush yesterday. But you can push out any profile that you've made in the FileWave console. So I'll switch back over here. I'll go back to my file sets, and I made some Engage profiles just for testing. When I made this profile, I said this is available in Engage. This then makes that profile available to the teachers to then use in their classroom, and I gave it a little bit more friendly title here. It also does have a mirror device feature in Engage. However, that does require a policy pushed out to the iPad that has AirPlay mirroring already configured. So if I hit this, it's to say there are no devices available. But had I had that pushed out, it would know that the teacher could then have the classroom iPad present to their Apple TV, or if they're using Air Server, to their machine. So, sorry, I didn't have the right screen over there. So they have, they could actually use AirPlay here and show that, mirror that kid's iPad up on the projector if they wanted to demo in class. We're still in the process of getting this rolled out to our district, but so we don't have much teacher feedback on it yet, but we plan on implementing that soon. That's about
Do the student have to manually join the teacher's class, or is that something the teacher can push?
That would be done through the sync in the back end. So if you use Clever in the district, all the classes will be synced in from Clever.
Oh, nice.
And if you have single sign-on used with Clever, so we use Clever with ADFS, so if they've logged into the Chromebook, they're already authenticated. There's no more passwords. It just goes right into Engage, all password authentication. So again, it really helps the single sign-on, so less clicks, less typing, especially at the lower grades that don't have to type their email address for the 5th time that day because it's, you know, a book worth long.
And there are other products, obviously, that can do these kind of things with Chromebooks or iOS, but the nice thing about this is it's built in with our licensing and FileWave, so we don't have, there's not another product that I have to use or try to get teachers, you know, to get connected to. It's all built into the same thing.
Okay.
And we don't like piecemeal our pricing either. So if you have a license for an iOS device, you get everything that we can do with an iOS device, including Engage and all that stuff. It's not nickel and dime.
That's
License is transferable.
Like if you had 100 iOS devices and trashed 5, can you add 5 more? Yeah.
It only counts active devices in FileWave. So like we've archived machines that have been wiped, it just reloaded. So it's technically the same device, but it's a different computer name, so different client ID. We've kept the old information there just for archive purposes, but it no longer counts towards the license once we've archived that client. On iOS devices, it doesn't have an archive feature, just deletes them because there's not much it can do with those, but it does reclaim the license at that point.
Because Apple requires we do not track things after they're gone.
And so that's all I have on Engage. Like I said, we're flying through this really fast. One feature FileWave does have that we don't use, so I'm not going to really cover it here, is imaging. It can image both Macs and PCs. We used MDT and Apple deployment prior to this, and we just didn't see a need to move at that point, so we've never even explored that. So I can't speak to that, but it's there. Again, it's included with your license. Then a little bit more in depth on boosters here. So we've configured a booster here. Essentially what it does is, I can go ahead and go to Booster Monitor. It redistributes packages for distribution. So if you have a WAN link between sites, you'd set up a booster at the remote site. If a client requests a file set, the booster will then go to the server and say, I need this file set. The booster will then receive it, but then any other client pointed to that booster will download from that booster and not pull from the main server, just to decentralize the bandwidth. So you can do it on the local LAN as opposed to having to pull, a 10 gig file set across the WAN for 40 computers in a lab. And they complain about slow internet when you do that.
Is there a limit to the number of boosters, Ben? I mean,
As far as your license is concerned?
Yeah.
You can have as many.
so, and they're free. You're not paying extra per booster, like you said. All licensing is rolled up.
You can even download an installer that makes something a booster, or like a VM appliance that is already a Linux booster.
And like for us, we already had Mac print servers in each building that just does Bonjour print sharing. And so because this is cross-platform, we just installed the booster application on the Mac print server, and it's now our booster. It's really lightweight. It just uses disk space, pretty much. All the heavy lifting is done back by the FileWave server. You can
show what the kiosks would look for the users?
Yes, let me actually, Chris will make a kiosk illustration here. I'm gonna cover it a little more in boosters.
Okay.
He'll do that and we'll demo that. So a new feature they just added in FileWave 12 to boosters is they will now do network discovery. So we've run a test on here. Here's a list of every device that was on our network. And this will scan the local subnet at whatever interval you specify. We're not actively scanning this subnet because it's these 5 computers. But you can see now, we now know here's a MAC address, here's a vendor, what type it is, what OS it's running, its IP address. The first day that came, I was like, let's just run a scan. It's like, well, there's some weird devices on there. We shouldn't have anything by that brand. We actually found some things that people had brought in and just plugged in. So on our production system, we have this scanning every subnet at midnight. Just, it runs a quick scan, retrieves this information. We found there's different scan levels. So if I can do configure discovery. So we're just doing the local subnet here. One time you can set the schedule, and we're doing the fast scan, but you could actually retrieve a lot more information, and Ben probably knows a lot more about that.
Yeah, so we try to be consistent with known terminology. So we use the Nmap terminology for the aggressive, passive levels of scanning that we're doing, and we're gathering pretty similar results too. There is one field that's really handy in all of these results that was in the device discovery, and that was the is FileWave client installed. So during this scan, we're actually looking at the devices that FileWave could manage on the network. And we're saying, oh, I see this is a Mac, but the FileWave client is not on it. So you can use this use the discovery as a tool to kind of, for search and destroy, right? Like you deployed DP, bought a whole new slew of laptops from Apple or whatever it was, and then you could go back and say, well, it looks like these 3 laptops are still here, and those should have been surplused. Or these 3 laptops somehow got imaged instead of going through the DP process, and the client's not on there. So you can use this as a tool to make sure you've grabbed everything that you're supposed to be managing.
And as to that, you can see this is our demo Mac here, and you can see FileWave installed. True. It knows it's there.
So one of the features we like at Centennial is all of our technicians are immersed in FileWave. We do file set pushes, we check to make sure that the device is checked in, we do all our health checks to make sure when somebody opens a ticket saying this software isn't working, our call guy, the first guy that answers a phone, can go in and re-verify these file sets. The greatest thing about that, with everybody in there, you don't know who's making changes when, where. If I hit update model from mine,
Mines could tell me that he's updating the model, and it will lock me out during that time period.
yep, so there can't be any conflictive changes while I apply the model settings that I need to apply. All right, so I went ahead and made some associations to our test Mac here for FileWave kiosk mode.
Yep, and we'll go here, we can pull up the client monitor, and we can see that it's connected. It's going to check in 36 seconds, so we don't have to wait that long.
Well, we can verify now because we're super patient.
We could. I could have also set the interval lower than 2 minutes for this conference, but I didn't.
Yeah. A lot of little things you can customize that make it great.
Yeah, and so once that happens here, I'm just going to force it.
I'm all about forcing things.
Yeah, so once that happens, I'll switch over to our Mac here.
Yep.
This little red,
Overscan.
the
So
projector.
you can't see it in overscan. There's a red swoosh up on the taskbar. Robin's going to click that now.
Their head swoosh.
And you hit install software. So it looks, it's the FileWave icon, and it's just up on the
Yeah.
bar up there. Install software. I can go in here. Hey, look, there's some applications available. This, because we don't have a VPP installed, this is an iOS app, and so it says get a license. We don't have a license for that. Google Chrome's already installed, and the teacher says, I need to install Uplink. They hit Uplink. They do not need admin rights to do this. FileWave runs as root on the machine, so we don't give any of our teachers admin rights on their Macs. We give them software they can use through here, and this stuff we don't need everyone to have, but if they want it, it's here. We maintain the library. If we get requests and say, oh, there are people who might want this, instead of just doing a one-off install, we'll put it in the kiosks, so for anyone else who wants it, we will do that. Kiosk associations can actually go through per group, so our math department at the high school got some math software, what was it? ExamView, and it came with the curriculum free license, so we put it in kiosk for anyone who wanted. They just click on ExamView. Yes.
So does this work in with PCs as well?
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, obviously you can't put a Mac package on a PC,
Right,
but
have
Well, you
that
can.
list yourself.
Yeah, we're running as a system service, so we have all the rights that we need to
Yep.
do. So same thing. The user does not have to be an admin to install or even uninstall things.
Yep. And we do use it on PC, like Robin said at the beginning. Our PC lab that needed CS6, within 15 minutes, the entire lab had it installed and was ready for use when the students logged in the next period.
he cried a little bit because I pushed 10 gigs to 40 computers across a gig connection.
But we made it.
The customer's happy, and that's what matters.
Exactly. They weren't happy while I was pushing because their internet was really slow to that wing.
10 minutes, we'll just do Q&A.
Yeah.
So we're pretty
10
well
minutes
finished.
left, we'll just do some Q&A and we can go back over things that Robin and Chris have covered.
That kiosk icon is also customizable. It doesn't have to be the FileWave sail or flag, as it were. So some schools even will do it based off of the site, right? So when you're at a particular site, it is the Mustang or whatever that logo is. So people know that they hit their mascot in the top right corner or the bottom right system tray if it's Windows, and that's where your local app store is.
So with iPads, if the teacher has certain apps that they want to have available for their students that period, is there a kind of a in-user interface so that they can push apps to their students?
I believe yes. So if I go back into our file sets here and we have our iOS app here, and let's say remote desktop, and I didn't mean to duplicate. We'll do create association. I'm going to send that out to just all my iPads. Why not? So now I've created that association. If I go back to my, I usually do it this way. I don't like that view, just personal preference. Right here, so associated file sets. I now see that that is there. I can make that a kiosk association. I don't think you can put that as an Engage profile, can you?
So what are you looking to do? Are you looking for, like, the teacher downloaded a super cool app today and they want everybody to have it now?
Yeah, like if they want to push
So
an app
that's
to their
A, that's
iPad.
scary, that we're trusting
Yep.
them, because if it's free, then easy enough the teacher could send the app link URL through Engage and say, here's this app, download it. But if these, which is typically what I see, is if these are district-owned devices that are supervised devices that no iTunes ID is actually on there, you're going to want to device assign that app, which means now you have to have a VPP purchase involved. And you typically don't give every faculty member the ability to purchase things in the VPP program. So you can see where we're kind of limited. Now you can set it up if you wanted to say a department head is allowed to like have one of those VPP purchaser, I forget the terminology, IDs that is, what's your term for someone who can purchase? Facilitator. Is a VPP facilitator. You could have the VPP token sync to a folder, and that folder is already associated out to the entire department. So technically, as soon as they purchase something in the VPP program, it would, and the purchase goes through and FileWave syncs, it's going to immediately start pushing it out as a device-assigned app. But that's also scary because you're trusting that they're purchasing something that.
What if it's already purchased, they own it,
Okay.
the school owns it?
Sure.
There's not enough space on the iPad, let's say, to put everything they want on there. So they have to pull back, the teacher needs to pull back and push out apps.
Probably the best way to just do a kiosk and just instruct the students, say, go to the kiosk, get this app today.
And then they can uninstall, they'd have to tell them to uninstall this because we're not using it today, and then install this.
Some of the drawbacks we've seen in the past, though, with that is that there's a certain number of apps you can download from Apple off a certain network outbound IP before they start saying, hey, you've downloaded way too much. Because there's sometimes we've had to wipe an iPad, and then like when we refresh our carts sometimes, they don't get all of them right away at the same time. So that's the only drawback we see.
Yeah, we refreshed carts and then just swamped our bandwidth before doing that.
Do you have a caching server where it would access?
We do, but it was the local AP that was swamped because we had 30 iPads pulling from one AP.
And Mark may know better, but last I heard is that the caching servers can't cache iOS apps, correct?
No, they can.
No, they can.
Oh, they can?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is,
That's what they're for.
however, a revocation reassign time, minimum time within the VPP program. Because what Apple wants to prevent, and do correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, is that you have a lab of, you have 2 labs of 10, and you're revoking it from one lab to the other lab every day and back and forth. There's this built-in 24-hour, once you've revoked something and reassigned a VPP license, you can't, like within 24 hours, revoke it and reassign it again to prevent that kind of, I'm only buying half that I need to legally have for everything. So you couldn't, if this was becoming a daily occurrence, having to uninstall and reinstall to swap apps, you probably would run into that problem as well.
We really try to limit that, so as a matter of policy, because teachers will just go, oh, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool, I want that, and then they want it on the cart. So as a matter of policy, if they want new apps installed on the iPads on those carts, then they have to be vetted first through their PLCs and then approved by their principal. And then so that limits down to how many we have, and then once that comes in, then we centrally manage all the VPP through purchases through me. Once it's done, hand it off to Robin, and he goes through FileWave and pushes them out.
Preferences and show them VPP synchronization.
So this is the permissions he's kind of about. So if you did need to delegate out, you could granularly configure what they can and can't do with FileWave, and even give them access to specific tokens. So if the school had a token, they could use that. We have just one district token, so, but you could get as granular as that if you wanted to. Chris is saying VPP, so if I go into here, here's where you kind of configure everything with your VPP and your
Shrink your
DB.
window down. Your overscan's nasty. There we go.
So here's our VPP stuff. This basically synchronizes with Apple. It's fairly quick to configure. I mean, once you got the Apple stuff, you put your certificates in, configure your tokens, and you're done. And this is how it gets everything. Synchronization is fairly quick. I'm not going to do it now because our internet, we see, has issues today. It will stall. We had trouble this morning. We used to do a per device using the old VPP codes way. We actually ordered the Apple and got all of our licenses converted over to the new token-based licensing, which then allows you to do per device assignment, which has been huge. Because at one point we had actually gone through and made an Apple ID for every 10 devices, and we don't have to do that anymore.
And I do have to say that one of the best things I love about FileWave is 0-day support for new releases. You'll usually get an email a day or two before they find out Apple's about to do a big push, or even the day of, or maybe 5 minutes after if nobody really knows, saying, hey, look, we already support 10.13 or iOS 10.4, and this new feature's coming in, and they'll give you a full list of features that they support, and oh, we know this is coming down the pipe and support by Apple, so hopefully in the next revision we'll have this extra feature added, and that's been very integral to us in the way we plan things as well.
I think even like big features like Apple School Manager, I think, what was it, less than a week it was implemented?
Yeah.
From the time Apple School Manager went live to the public to the time FileWave had support for it. And again, that's kind of what we're talking about. If I go back to my preferences here, under Engage, here's where you can configure everything Engage and sys. So I have no sys configured, but here's where you configure.
You sync with Clever or with Apple School Manager for your source.
Yeah, so I'm using a CSV. You guys did a manual CSV for the demo. We're using Clever, but you could use Apple School Manager.
Yeah, and even if you go to the Classroom tab, close that one, go to the Classroom, Apple Classroom tab. Yeah, so that all stuff came quick, and we were actually, I think maybe still, the only one who was doing Classroom image support for the longest time after Apple came out with Apple Classroom. And you can actually use both at the same time. You can use FileWave Engage with Apple Classroom.
Is that the certificate?
You turn on if you want. So if you're using like Clever as your source, you could have access to some of the SISs
I
that
don't have a
aren't
certificate.
natively supported by Apple's School Manager, because we're going to use Clever. And then you could use Apple Classroom
Kill me,
and
Ben.
Engage at the same time. You have to save it. You must.
I don't have a certificate. I don't want
It's
to save it.
generated one for you. That's the key
Generated
that
one.
it just generated. Just save it to your desktop.
I'm going to put it in my ACPE folder.
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
Fix that, Ben. Every time I hit OK, the window goes behind.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we're out of time. Thank you for coming to our session. Again, we'll be available for questions. Thanks a lot.
And it doesn't do that on the Windows side. It's only the Mac. A window goes behind every time.
Do we have to stop it? Or do
Oh, yeah.
All right,
It's still going.
You want to shut